And they told me that this is the first time that they're feeling it.
Roya was using Bitcoin in a very unique way.
I came from a community and society that cash was very important. We didn't even use much debit card and credit card.
In 2010, Roya became Afghanistan's first female tech CEO.
Hi guys, welcome to the Orange Protocol. This time this video will be more concentrated. We're gonna talk face to face. It's only because I'm lazy this week and I don't have really have other words to say to that. But for now, I'm particularly in this week seeing a lot of backlash about Bitcoin and everything that's related to Bitcoin. We also try to search the servers. Where are the servers? We also missed something incredible. That was the MIT Bitcoin. I know it's a 16-hour recorded on YouTube, but I will not talk about those 16 hours. I will take the time to talk and listen with you guys about one in a particularly. Man, this word is really hard. So yeah, we're gonna listen to Roya Mahboob. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. She was invited to speak about something that in Afghanistan has been done since 2013. I will not talk about over it. She's explained it really well, and they have a lot of questions about that. It's when I saw it for the first time, it was a hard culture for me because I live in Canada and we're trying to be equal to others as gender, and I think it's moving great along the way. But in other country, it's gender. It's still a big impact. There's still a big impact on how male and female and other gender are seen in the society. And in Afghanistan, I like in the movies we hear and we see stuff, but when you don't live in the country, you don't really know what's happening. So I think that she's done something heroic, and for today we're basically putting in front of our video because it's a very heroic thing that she did. And if we can speak more about women that goes beyond their culture and their religion to help others and to make sure that the families and can live, can eat, can sleep, and all that stuff that are very important. She should be more talked about than a teacher that's searching for servers. So with that ado, we're going to make a full screen.
Bitcoin with my co-founder Ishana, who's now a first year here at MIT and a part of the planning committee. She's probably running around somewhere outside, but I definitely thought of this as a full circle moment. And HRF is proud to support this event. I think it's very important that we bring together students and people from all around the Bitcoin space to kind of come together in an environment like this. And this year, I'm joined by my great friend, Roya Mahboob, who's a part of the HRF community for over a decade now. In 2010, Roya became Afghanistan's first female tech CEO. And for those who are familiar with her story, in 2013, the same year that the MIT Bitcoin Club was founded, Roya was using Bitcoin in a very unique way all the way across the world in Afghanistan. So Roya, thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
Thank you for having me here.
So,
I will not stop too much, but it's important to notice that in 2010, countries and CEOs and big company or little company was actually using Bitcoin as a money, as it was supposed to be built. And for it's something that we kind of we see Venezuela, we see other places, but it's the first time that I've heard about that story. And like I said, it's something that they done as a woman in Afghanistan. Also, it's something that Bitcoin has provided. It's really incredible.
we talked about like how in 2013, right? Like you're using Bitcoin, right? Like, and you're known for the story now across so many different articles and media, because in 2013 it was like, as Jeremy Rubin and the founding people of the MIT Club know, it was this very like abstract concept, right? Talk to us about how Bitcoin looked in 2013 and how you ended up using it.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me here and inviting me. Thank you for HR for supporting me all these years. Back into that time, I have to say that we didn't coming to using the Bitcoin just because of like an investment or financial tools, as a like investment, but that was most because of the problem that was existed, and we have to find a way to resolve that. I'm backing that in 2010 when I saw my company, we started hiring a lot of the women that they are bloggers and engineers that they can work for my company. But then we built in a platform with my business partner, Francesco, who was in the US, that this platform allowed the women across Afghanistan, also Pakistan and other places, that they can write the blogs and they can sharing the videos, and we pay them based on the content that they created. The same things, that the same concept that right now you have with TikTok and Instagram influencer. At the time, we had it for everybody that they can use it. And there was an issue because when the number of our contributors get increased, and then our engineers across Afghanistan, we had also in Islamabad and Kuwait, the number, there was one problem. It wasn't a technical problem, it wasn't an educational problem, it was the finance, that many of these women didn't have a bank account. And to sending the money for thousands of the people or hundreds of people, even a small amount.
I had to pause because I actually, in my journey for Bitcoin, I have really thought about more how people have difficulty to take money from the bank. I'm probably at the age of digital money, like a credit card and stuff like that. So when you transfer money, it's only digital information that goes to like a indirect transfer or other stuff like that. So I basically never really move physical money to a bank to another one. It's always like they do what they're supposed to do when you try to make sure that everything goes okay. But most of other countries that are not Canada has difficulty to only have to have a bank, and I feel grateful for that. But also I feel a lot of anger about how government and other banks are not helping those in need. So I just wanted to point that.
It was created challenging for us because we have to sometimes deposit the money in the bank of the relatives, And usually men take the money and you cannot do anything about that. And then second is that there was another system called Hawala, which is for generation works and for centuries works in Afghanistan at the time. 85% most trusted the Hawala rather than the bank. And you give the money to one brokers, and then they give you a code, and another broker in different cities will give the money to that person. But then again, with the Hawala, also there was very male-dominated. Women wouldn't walk in the Hawala, or we call it Sarafi at the time. In Afghani, we call it Sarafi. And so they have to, again, send their brothers, fathers, and husbands to take that money. And whole point of our programs was this to empowering women to get their financial independence. But through this way, we could. And then we look at the mobile money, which was M-Pesa at the time, and it wasn't much popular. Again, you have to give, you get the credit, you needed to make it a cash, and again, you have to go through the man. And then we heard PayPal. PayPal didn't work in Afghanistan, Pakistan, it was banned. And then my business partner for, I think, a year almost, reading news about the Bitcoin, and he says, oh, send an article and says, like, look at this, what do you think about that? And obviously I was skeptical because I came from a community and society that cash was very important. We didn't even use much debit card and credit card. And cash is something that people trusted. And I told him, I'm not sure about that, but let's try it and see what we can do. We built a digital wallet within our platform, simple digital wallet. And you know, with the push of a button, the Bitcoin will appear in the wallet of the women, without any middleman. In a second, the women take it. And that was amazing for us because for the first time, the Bitcoin could bypass our social and physical barriers, and that's how we got involved with Bitcoin, and we got excited about using it.
So in 2013, when you started using Bitcoin, what was the price of Bitcoin?
I think earlier it was 100, then it goes to around $800, and then again it's crashed at the end of 2013. And obviously we lost 2/3 of our business because we got so excited about Bitcoin. And we put most of our monies in Bitcoins, and when it was crashed, it was difficult because when you are living in a community that you paid many of these women for the first time, they feel that they got the money, and for the first time, they feel that they control of their own things that they earned from them, the money that they have it. And they told me that this is the first time that they're feeling it. And I just realized that psychology is that the money wasn't just a transaction, but it was, for them, it was an identity, it was, dignity for these women. And they feel that for the time the system not caught them and recognizing them. But with the Bitcoin, obviously we give them, and they got very excited. And my sister helping them with making cash and giving them money and teaching them how they can give if they needed to change it. But then when the prices rise down, everything has changed, because then everybody look at you that you are a fraud, that you make a scam of them. And obviously we have to buying and giving the difference of the Bitcoin, because at that time money wasn't important, reputation was important. But we got excited because many of the other, I remember many of the girls didn't want to change the Bitcoin because they want to keep it. And some of them keep it, my sister keep it, and then she be able to pay her master's degree when she got at the Cornell University. Some of the girls, I remember that they left it Afghanistan to Germany to the refugees that they're smuggling, and they couldn't take their monies from the bank or jewelries, but they had keep it the Bitcoins that
in 2013, right, when you started at around $100, Bitcoin then shot up to nearly $1,000, right? So it was very euphoric. And then, as we're used to in the Bitcoin space, right, there was a 80% crash, right? So at this point, you were focused on making people whole, right? Your sister was kind of like the de facto peer-to-peer converter of these, and like she ended up saving her Bitcoin. And when you all came to the U.S., she used it to finance her education at Cornell. I think it's important to touch on the fact that you mentioned, women cannot have money in Afghanistan due to their male relatives. There's a lack of infrastructure, right? You can't necessarily just turn on PayPal, right? Like we've talked about this before. Like we've made the joke before. It was like, over here in the U.S., you can kind of just pick a color of a fintech app. There's so many apps that we can use today, and the dollar is kind of just the water we swim in. Like we're very used to it. And this problem is not just.
Yeah, like this is, we make joke about it. Like we have fat kids that eats a lot and stuff like that. In North America, we're it's kind of it's a blessing, but also we have the most over high numbers of suicidal. I think that in other country, because we have so much pressure on what's the value of money is. I've seen another video. The people said that before Bitcoin, he always thought that he was making time, he was working for time to have more money. And since he got in the Bitcoin way, he's living his life. I will have one day his video on how he explained it, how you see the difference. But I hope very much that in a closest future, people will have less stress about money. But they will. I hope they will more stress about what they will do tomorrow, because they will have so much stuff that they can't do.
Unique to Afghanistan, right? So there's over 2 billion people all around the world who don't have access to a bank account, and over 75% of the world today lives under some sort of authoritarian regime where money is being surveilled, it's being censored, it's being confiscated, it's being inflated. So Bitcoin is increasingly important here, right? Like we've seen this over the years, time and time and time again. And Roya was actually very important for HRF to understand this, right? So the Human Rights Foundation, we also started using Bitcoin in 2014. And really over the last decade, we've been constantly trying to educate and fund and train nonprofit groups and activists, because this has turned into a really important topic. And in our community, we saw Roya doing this, right? So in the MIT community, Jeremy Rubin was kind of like the crazy person who was giving people Bitcoin. Roya was the crazy person in the humanitarian organizations and the group and the community that was kind of teaching us and showing us about Bitcoin, right? So as we mentioned, this is unfortunately not a problem that's unique to Afghanistan, right? Like, what does the lack of financial access and the lack of human rights, like how do those kind of coincide? Because a lot of people don't view finance and human rights and the ability to transact as something that's really tied together, right? So what does that look like on a global scale?
Sure, I think it's very important connections, and we always often talk about human rights as a freedom of speech, rights, women rights, and the rights to education and a political and social movement. But all of these rights needed one thing is this basic is a foundation is access, and financial access is playing the important part of that. As you mentioned, it's almost close to the 2 billion people. They don't have a bank account and they are unbanked. Basically, they don't have access to, it's just not about that they don't have a bank. They basically cannot save the money. They cannot send the money. They cannot have access to credit and saving, and even created a long-term planning for themselves. And in terms of the human rights, the rights is not only is a theory writing in the books and the way of the financial access, you cannot really practice many of these rights. And saying that these numbers, there is a pattern behind of these numbers. If you look at who are these people, we can see that the majority are the women. There are refugees and displacement people, and the people who don't have a formal bank account. And it's not just random. I think that it's a structure exclusion that people cannot have an access to opportunity. But on the other hand, you already mentioned that I'm coming from communities that they are always a conflict. And when you're living in a conflict area or in a political and fragile environment, if you say some things that it is wrong, and even in one tweet, one post, it's equal to closing your account. They're freezing your account. They blocking the transaction of the money. And in countries like Iran, if you go to, for example, just simply to protest not to overturn the government, just say that you needed food, you needed better access or equality, it's equal to being a traitor, and they will put you in the jail. They try to publicity, they announce that they're gonna frozen the accounts, and they're taking whatever it's belong to you, over the houses and the cars. So when you're living in such a situation, there is uncertainty. It's not like you're living in a country with stability and be living in totally different society. So I think back into the questions like yours, we giving an example in 2021 when Afghanistan collapsed. What is happening that people overnight wake up and they find out that if they are associated to the government or any military, they cannot have access to your bank account because your bank account is basically get frozen. And that is a show that the financial access is important, and sometimes the regime use it is become more than the economic tools, is becoming as a tools of the control. So whoever control your money, they control your lives, because if you don't have access to your money, you cannot find a ways to escape from the danger. You cannot, for example, paying your families, paying for your education, and even making plan for your futures. So that's why this type of the regime, they're trying to mostly focusing on having access to your account or using as a tools to silence the people. And in terms of the perspective of the human rights, again, these are all the rights that if they taken from you just because of the political opinion and because of living an identity or like a gender or a geography that you live, then I think that that's becoming an issue, because this is they cannot practice.
So, I mean, as you saw very early on, right, from 2013 and even before that, right, and until you discover Bitcoin as a solution, you're kind of faced with the reality that being able to transact is not a luxury, right? Like, you need these things. You're one of the first female tech CEOs in Afghanistan. You're at this point responsible for hundreds and later thousands of girls, right? So you have to find a way, and you did find that way, right? But it wasn't, I take it as easy, right? Doing that early on, and in 2014, just a year later, you were then forced into exile, and you're kind of going back and forth, into Afghanistan, and then in 2021, you mentioned that the regime fell to Taliban. I remember we were talking about this when it happened, and it's been 5 years since then, right? So what does Afghanistan look like today? And how you were using Bitcoin in 2013, you later realized that you're going to have to use it in a similar way again, but from abroad, right? So in 2021, you end up financing education from abroad, right? You were living in the US, thousands and thousands of miles away. Tell us how you had to revisit Bitcoin as a tool in 2021.
Sure. As mentioned before, that in 2021, overnight, the government has changed, so does the access. And millions of the people woke up, their bank account, especially if you're part of the government, military, and organization, or work for as a contractor, you are in the risk because your account is either is freezing or the transaction is blocked. And then the bank system also is kind of collapsed. The ATM machine was run out of the cash, MoneyGram and the Western Union was also run out of the cash. So it was very difficult for the association organization to send money to Afghanistan because 70% of people are having unstable housing. They couldn't pay for their rents, they couldn't pay for their foods. And in the same time, there was evacuation going on, and we needed to pay for the saving houses, and then trying to saving the people that without that they are in danger. So my organization, many other organizations, they found ways and alternative ways, which was a Bitcoin and a stablecoin during the time, that they became as a lifeline at that moment, that you can send the money directly to the individuals, that they can pay for their foods, or they can pay for the saving houses in some cases and for the evacuation. Years later, months or years later, we obviously trying to have underground education centers, which again is easier to sending money to Bitcoins to the teachers there, that they can continue of providing education for the girls, because you know that when the Taliban took over, they banned education for the girls, and it's almost 4 years has passed, and millions of the girls right now don't have access to education. The Taliban every day right now created new rules, from banning the girls to go to the schools, to university, to work, to justice, to healthcare, and they're creating I shouldn't use the words of the ban or like restriction. I think that this is just simply a gender apartheid that's happening in Afghanistan. So we're using crypto like Bitcoin to help on saving, at least giving a lifeline to the education, which I think that is very important. And another thing that's also important to remember, that about the bank, I wanted to mention about this story. A friend of mine, she was ambassador, just simply, she was an MP, and she was used for years to defend the rights of the women. And days before the Afghanistan collapse, she felt it, and she inherited a lot of money, and she sent part of her money from the bank to a UK to account of her daughters. And then when Afghanistan collapsed, she evacuated, and when she arrived to UK, she followed all the rules, but when she arrived, she saw that the money didn't arrive. So she contacted the bank and asked that what's happening with the money, and they told her simply like, oh, well, we know that you are in the list of the bonds, so that's why we didn't send the money. But the question is that she sent days before that even Afghanistan collapsed. She sent days before that even her name is being the list of the bond. It shows that how the system can sometimes anticipate the power. They know that what's going to happen, so they basically taking your money because they know that you have some sort of like association, and you might be part of that list. So that's why trusting to the bank and that type of the region, sometimes it's not reliable. You cannot rely on the bank because they sometimes going to act in advance before even the new regime or new governments will give your names. So that's created that trust issue from stability to go to suddenly to uncertainty.
Yeah. And you mentioned in 2021, right? Like as people woke up, right? Like imagine you wake up and your bank account is effectively arrested, right? So regimes nowadays, really in the past decade, have started to learn that what's more powerful sometimes than actually expending resources and trying to capture individuals is to just freeze your bank account, right? Like you're completely like, imagine you don't have access to your credit cards, your banking and ATM, etc. And even the access to send money, right? So like us at the Human Rights Foundation, before we started using Bitcoin for grants, right? We would try to send in wires, given that the organization or the individual had a bank account. And imagine you receive a wire in a dictatorship that's labeled the Human Rights Foundation. It's completely absurd. At best, you get brought in for questioning, and the money gets intercepted. And nowadays, in the humanitarian space and in the grant giving space, like we understand that Bitcoin is a very viable tool, right? Like much larger organizations nowadays have turned to this, right? But even actually, like for us, it seems obvious, but even in 2026, we're still seeing mainstream media, and we're still seeing professors and politicians kind of question the worth of Bitcoin, right? Like apparently Satoshi was founded by the New York Times last week, right? Like you can expend energy into doing that, but there's less of this nuanced subject that goes into the reporting of Bitcoin, right? And it seems like such a niche topic, but in reality, it's so obvious, right? Like, what do you think about over time, you've been using this as a tool for nearly 15 years now, right? Like seeing this time and time again in the media, that's they're trying to downplay it, they're trying to criticize it, because frankly they just don't understand, right? Like what's your take on that? Because you had to put yourself at risk and your reputation at risk for Bitcoin, and even seeing that today, it's not taken as seriously. Like what's your take on that?
It's a good question. I think that we're talking about a stable environment, which is they are talking about choices. So obviously, here the bank system is work. There is a structure. There is a law that going to protect the individual asset, and in many cases, at least. So that's why. When it's come to the Bitcoin, it becomes a choice as an option, and they don't understand it, so they may like it to characterize it as. But in our community, in a fragile and a political environment, this is about access and survival. We don't have that, the luxuries that the people have in a stable economy. And we're talking about more than 56% of the population. We don't have that. And for us, Bitcoin is different because Bitcoin is not controlled by any institution or government. And we're thinking that is as open and this is borderless. And that's why I think that Bitcoin get more popularity than any other coins that exist. And again, we used it for, even when we used it in 2013, it was mostly to solve a problem, a practical problem that we had, because the system usually excluded you. And the media usually likes the news that they can make more clicks. And I think that Bitcoin is one of those technology that bring a lot of the attentions, and that's why I think that they are care too much to invest on that. New York Times can do also write it about what's happening in the banking system in Afghanistan, can write it about that, how the regime in Iran are trying to confiscate it and freezing the accounts of the protester just because they go to the street and asking and demanding some things, and how cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and sometimes maybe also the stablecoin can help and save the people, at least to protect it what they are earned. We don't talk about businesses, again, not talking about the governments, we're talking about the individual level, that when you're living in that situation, you cannot trust to your banking system because it's not reliable, you cannot trust the other financial tools, so then you have an alternative, and the Bitcoin can fill that gap for us. So that's what I can say.
No, I mean, and today, right, like outside of the Bitcoin environment, I know you're working on, you founded countless companies and organizations. Today you're working on robotics and comics and AI and education, right? Like education's always been at the forefront of what you've been doing. What are you working on today, and why does that make you excited?
Well, because of the experience.
I'll have to end that part for now. I don't think that after that they have other stuff that they have to share. I will still link in the description the video that you can see. It's 8 hours long. It's about you can see the schedule on the website. It was 9:40 a.m. until 5 p.m. ish. So that was part one of good things that happen, that is happening to Bitcoin and that will still happen to Bitcoin. So I will share with you other great story. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.